When I saw my best friend holding my daughter's hand, standing beside my husband, I realized I'd lost two homes in one day. That image still burns in my mind. The afternoon light pouring through our living room window, my daughter Emma smiling up at her father, and beside him Leah, my best friend, her hand resting softly on his arm. It was the kind of quiet betrayal that doesn't shout, doesn't announce itself. It just breathes in the same air as you, pretending it belongs there. I didn't say anything that day. I couldn't. The air was too thick, and my body felt like it wasn't mine anymore. I just watched as Leah helped Emma with her coat, laughing in that warm, familiar way, the way she used to laugh with me. But before I ever saw that moment, before I felt the floor give way under my feet, there was another life, a gentler one. Leah and I met when we were 22, fresh out of college, waiting tables at a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and fried onions. She was the kind of woman who filled a room, big laugh, wild curls, a heart she wore right on her sleeve. I was quieter, steadier. If Leah was a storm, I was the calm afterward. We fit together in a way that made sense. When I got married to Tom, she was my maid of honor. She cried harder than my own mother during the vows. I remember she whispered, "He's a good one, Anna. You deserve this." And for a while, he was. Tom worked in construction management, long hours, but steady. He was practical, loyal, predictable in the way that made you feel safe. Our daughter, Emma, came 3 years later, with her father's green eyes and my quiet smile. We bought a modest house with a yellow porch swing and a maple tree in the front yard. Our weekends were full of barbecues, birthday parties, and late-night movies. Leah was always there, the auntie who'd bring too many cupcakes and stay until Emma fell asleep in her lap. Back then, I thought we were unbreakable. The three of us, and her. When Leah's marriage started to crumble, I didn't hesitate. Her husband, Mark, had been unfaithful, and she came to me in tears one Sunday night with 2 suitcases and a look of devastation I'll never forget. "Stay as long as you need," I told her. "We have space." Tom nodded in quiet agreement, setting her bags down in the guest room. "You're family, Leah," he said. "You'll get through this." For a moment, she just stared at him, her eyes soft, grateful. I thought nothing of it then. The first few weeks were easy. We ate dinner together, the four of us, and Emma adored having Leah around full-time. Leah cooked elaborate breakfasts, danced with Emma in the kitchen, and filled the house with laughter. It was almost healing to watch her come back to life. But somewhere in that laughter, something shifted. It was subtle at first, a look that lingered too long, a touch that brushed too close. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, Leah was my friend, my sister in everything but blood. Still, there were moments that pricked my peace. Like the evening I came home from work early. Tom was in the backyard, showing Leah how to fix the grill. She stood too close, her hand on his arm as she laughed at something he said. When they saw me, they both jumped back slightly, not guiltily, but awkwardly, like they'd been caught in a conversation they weren't ready to explain. "Hey, honey," Tom said, smiling, his voice too bright. "Leah was just helping me figure out the propane line." "Looks like she's doing a great job," I replied, forcing a smile. My throat tightened. Leah grinned, wiping her hands on a towel. "You've got a good man, Anna." "He's been helping me with stuff around the house I never learned." "Yeah," I said quietly. "He's good like that." After that, I started noticing little things. Her perfume in the hallway long after she'd gone upstairs. The way Tom's phone would light up late at night with her name. The quick, nervous glance he'd give me before setting it face down on the table. I told myself it was innocent, friendly. We were all close. It was normal. But normal didn't make my stomach twist like that. One night I sat in bed reading when Tom came out of the shower. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, then hesitated. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He didn't meet my eyes. "Just Leah. She can't sleep, says she's thinking too much." "Maybe she should talk to me instead of you," I said. He laughed, brushing it off. "She didn't want to bother you. You've got enough on your plate." He kissed my forehead, turned off the light, and fell asleep. I didn't. The next morning, Leah made pancakes, Emma's favorite, and poured me coffee like nothing was wrong. She chatted about a job interview and laughed when Tom complimented her cooking. And I watched them, studying every gesture, every glance. That's when I noticed it. The way he looked at her when she wasn't looking. Not admiration, not friendship. Something deeper, darker. It was the same way he used to look at me. That night, I went into the guest room after everyone was asleep. Her perfume lingered, heavy and sweet, and her phone sat charging by the bed. I stared at it for a long time. I could have looked. I could have opened it, but I didn't. Because if I did, I'd have to face what I already knew. Instead, I went back to bed, lay beside Tom, and stared at the ceiling until the morning sun crept in. Sometimes you don't need proof. Sometimes your body already knows the truth your mind refuses to name. The tension between us grew quietly, like smoke beneath a closed door. Little arguments over nothing, his sudden distance, her long work days that started after he left for site visits. Still, I clung to denial. Leah had been my friend for 15 years. She'd held my baby before I did. She'd seen me through miscarriages, funerals, birthdays, everything. She couldn't. But betrayal has a smell. You start to recognize it in the air before you ever see the flames. And I was starting to choke on it. It was a Saturday in late March, the kind of morning when spring feels close, but hasn't yet found the courage to stay. The air smelled of rain and warm earth. I was in the kitchen packing sandwiches for Emma's soccer game when I realized Leah wasn't home. Her car was gone, her bed made, her perfume lingering faintly in the hallway. "Did Leah mention going somewhere?" I asked Tom when he came down. He hesitated just for a second. She said she might visit a friend." "A friend?" I asked, turning toward him. "Which one?" He shrugged, grabbing his coffee. I didn't ask. Does it matter? It shouldn't have, but it did. Everything about Leah mattered lately. Where she went, what she wore, how she spoke to him. After the game, we came home to find her sitting on the porch swing with a glass of lemonade, barefoot, humming softly. She looked peaceful, like she belonged there. "Hey," she said, smiling up at us. "How was the game?" Emma ran to her, chattering about her goal, and Leah lifted her into her lap, her hand brushing Tom's as he passed. It was quick, so small you'd miss it if you weren't watching. But I was. That night, after dinner, Tom said he was going to the store for milk. He left his phone on the counter. I told myself not to look, but my fingers disobeyed. The lock screen lit up with a message. "Leah, drive safe. I'll wait in the back." My throat closed. My heart slammed against my ribs. When he returned an hour later, I was sitting on the couch, still staring at the television that wasn't on. He looked surprised. "You're still up?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "How was the store?" "Fine," he said too quickly. "They were out of milk." He held up a loaf of bread as if to prove something. I smiled, small, tight. "Out of milk, huh?" He didn't answer, just walked past me, his shoulders stiff. That was the night I stopped pretending. For the next few days, I watched them closely. Leah would come home late, her hair tousled, cheeks flushed. Tom would suddenly need to work overtime. Emma started asking why Auntie Leah didn't eat dinner with us anymore. Every lie they told me made me smaller, quieter. Then, one afternoon, I walked into the laundry room and found Tom's jacket hanging by the door. I reached into the pocket to check for receipts, I don't even know why, and pulled out a gold earring. It was Leah's, the one she'd lost last week, or said she had. I held it in my palm, cold and gleaming like proof I didn't want. That night, I confronted him. "Where did you go last night?" I asked. He didn't look up from his laptop. "Work." "Then why was Leah's earring in your jacket pocket?" He froze. His eyes flicked up, confusion melting into panic. She must have... He swallowed. "You're imagining things, Anna." "Am I?" I placed the earring on the table between us, because this looks pretty real to me.
For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he closed the laptop, stood up, and ran a hand through his hair. Anna, you're tired. You've been stressed. Stop it, I snapped. Don't you dare make me sound crazy.
He sighed heavily, looking at me with something like pity. She needed a friend, that's all. I was there for her. That's it. Then tell me, I whispered. Why does it feel like she's replacing me? He didn't answer. Leah avoided me for days after that. She left early, came home late, barely spoke during meals. When I finally cornered her in the kitchen, she was stirring sugar into her tea. Her eyes flicked up briefly. Something wrong? I took a breath. Leah, be honest with me. Is there something going on between you and Tom? She froze mid-stir. Then she laughed. Light, airy, too controlled. What? No, Anna, God, no. He's your husband. Exactly, I said softly. He's my husband. She placed the spoon down carefully, like she was setting a boundary between us. You're overthinking things. You've always been a little sensitive. The way she said it, gentle, patronizing, made something in me harden. I realized then that she wasn't afraid. Not of me, not of guilt. She was confident, comfortable, like someone who already knew how this story ended. A week later, I got the truth in the cruelest way possible. Emma had been working on a school project, my family tree. She drew pictures of everyone in colored pencil. There was me, Tom, Grandma, and then under the new family section, she'd drawn Tom and Leah. I asked her gently, "Sweetheart, why did you draw Leah next to Daddy?" She smiled, her eyes wide and innocent. Because Daddy said Auntie Leah might be my new stepmom one day. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the paper. What? I managed to whisper. She nodded proudly. They said it's a surprise, but I can tell you because you're my mommy. My ears rang, my vision blurred. That was how I found out, through my daughter's crayons and honesty. That night I waited until Emma was asleep. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the kitchen clock. I sat at the dining table, the drawing spread before me. When Tom came in, he looked exhausted, or maybe guilty. "Tom," I said calmly, "sit down." He hesitated, then obeyed. I slid the drawing toward him. "Want to tell me what this means?" He stared at it, his jaw tightening. She misunderstood. "Did she?" I asked. "Or did you tell her something you weren't ready to tell me?" Silence. Then softly he said, "Anna, I didn't mean for it to happen." My breath caught. So it's true. He rubbed his face with his hands. It wasn't supposed to. We were both hurting. You were distant. She was alone. "Stop," my voice cracked. "Don't you dare make this about me." His eyes glistened. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" I whispered. "You ruined our marriage, our family, and all you have is sorry?" He stood slowly. "I think we need space. For everyone's sake, space?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean you want to leave? With her?" He didn't deny it. That was the last night he slept in our house. Leah moved out the next day, together. The quiet that followed was unbearable. Every corner of the house held their ghosts, their laughter, their whispers, the warmth they stole. Emma cried for her father every night, and I, who once had a best friend and a husband, was left with neither. But grief, I would learn, is not the end of the story. It's only the beginning of becoming someone new. The weeks that followed were a blur of silence and paperwork. Divorce filings, custody arrangements, visits that made my daughter's laughter feel foreign in my own house. Tom moved into a small apartment across town. Leah, God, it still hurts to say it, moved in with him. Every Friday, he picked up Emma after school, and every Sunday evening, she came home with stories that sliced me open. Daddy and Auntie Leah took me to the zoo. Auntie Leah bought me new shoes. Auntie Leah says I can call her mom if I want to. Each word was a knife disguised as a child's joy. I'd smile, nod, say, "That's nice, sweetheart," then cry quietly after she went to bed. The first time Emma called her mom by accident at home, I felt my body go cold. She didn't even notice what she'd said. But I did. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the photo of the four of us on the mantel before everything cracked. I wanted to smash it, to burn every memory of Leah's laughter from my walls, but I didn't. Because anger, I realized, was easy, healing was harder. Still, something inside me needed justice, not revenge, not the cruel kind, just truth. It started with a message from Mark, Leah's ex-husband. He wrote, "Heard about what happened. You deserve better. Call me if you ever need to talk." I stared at that message for an hour before replying. "You knew, didn't you?" His reply came fast. "I suspected. She always talked about Tom. Said you had the perfect husband. I thought it was just envy. That word stayed with me. Leah had envied my life, the one I built with her sitting right beside me, cheering me on. I met Mark for coffee a few days later. He looked weary, older somehow. She did the same thing to me, he said quietly, stirring his cup. Found someone who'd make her feel bigger. She always wanted to be the center of the story. I nodded slowly, the truth settling like ash. She's good at making people love her. He gave a hollow laugh. Until she doesn't need them anymore. We talked for over an hour, about Leah, about how easily she could become whoever you needed her to be. It was comforting and devastating all at once. When I got home that night, I felt something shift. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't crying. I was thinking. 2 months later, Leah and Tom announced their engagement on Facebook. A photo of them at sunset, holding hands, Emma between them. Her caption, "Sometimes life brings you exactly where you're meant to be." I remember reading that line over and over. It was the kind of cruelty wrapped in politeness that only Leah could craft. My phone buzzed all evening, friends texting me screenshots, distant relatives whispering, "Are you okay?" I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I went upstairs, opened Emma's door, and watched her sleep. Her hair was spread across the pillow, her breath even, peaceful. She didn't deserve this chaos, none of it. So I made a decision that night. I would protect her peace, even if it meant pretending mine didn't exist. When the wedding day came, I wasn't invited, of course, but Emma was the flower girl. Tom had asked if I'd be okay with it. I'd smiled politely. If it makes her happy. She wore a cream-colored dress with a sash Leah had picked out. Before she left, she twirled in the living room, her little shoes sparkling. "Do you think I'll do a good job, Mommy?" I knelt, straightening her ribbon. "You'll be perfect, sweetheart." She hugged me tight, smelling of baby powder and something floral. Then she left, off to celebrate the wedding of my best friend and my ex-husband. That afternoon, I walked to the park, sat on our old bench by the pond, and let myself grieve, not for Tom, not even for Leah, but for the version of me who still believed people always mean what they say. When I came home, I made myself tea. The house was painfully quiet. At around 7, there was a knock at the door. It was Mark. He looked uncomfortable, holding a small envelope. "I thought you should see this," he said. "I got it by mistake." They sent the wedding invites to my old address before realizing inside was a photo. Tom and Leah smiling, holding hands. Emma between them again, throwing flower petals. But it wasn't the picture that caught my attention. It was the small handwritten message on the back. "To new beginnings, for the family that was always meant to be." Always meant to be. That night, something in me hardened into clarity. I didn't ruin their day. I didn't crash the wedding or post angry messages online. That's not who I am. But the next week, when the custody hearing came up for review, I told my lawyer everything. About Leah moving in before the divorce was finalized, about Emma's confusion, about their disregard for emotional boundaries. And the court listened. It wasn't vengeance. It was truth finally being heard. The judge ordered that Emma would primarily stay with me, with supervised visitation at Tom's for a while, until she adjusted to the new family dynamic. When the ruling came through, Leah tried to call me. I let it ring. Later, she left a voicemail. "Anna, please don't do this. Emma needs both of us. Don't make this ugly." Her voice was still that same gentle, coaxing tone she used when she wanted something. I deleted it without listening to the end. Weeks passed. I focused on Emma, on rebuilding our routines, school lunches, bedtime stories, Saturday pancakes. Slowly, the air in our home changed. One evening, while drawing together, Emma said softly, "Mommy, Daddy, and Auntie Leah fight a lot." I paused. "They do?" She nodded. "Auntie Leah gets mad when Daddy talks about you." I smiled faintly. "Then maybe she'll learn that love built on hurt doesn't last." Emma looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" I brushed her hair back. "You'll understand when you're older, sweetheart." A few months later, Tom came by to drop off some of Emma's things. He lingered at the door longer than usual. "You've done well," he said softly. "She seems happy." "She's resilient," I replied. He nodded. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. Leah and I—" He stopped, looked down. "Things aren't what I thought they'd be." I didn't gloat. I just looked at him and said, "That's what happens when you build a future on someone else's broken home." He flinched, nodded again, and left. That night, as I tucked Emma in, she whispered, "Mommy, will things ever be like before?" I smiled sadly. "No, sweetheart. But maybe they can be good again. Just different." She nodded sleepily and curled against me. And as I watched her drift off, I realized this was what healing looked like. Quiet, imperfect, but real. About 6 months after their wedding, the whispers began. At first, it was little things. Parents at Emma's school would glance my way in the pickup line, murmur something and look away. One mom, a kind woman named Julia, finally told me what everyone had been talking about. "They were seen arguing at the fall festival," she said carefully. "Leah was crying. Loudly. Something about him still loving you." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Tom had always been a man of habit. He liked order, predictability. Leah was chaos wrapped in perfume. Their affair had been thrilling because it was forbidden, but once the thrill faded, all that was left were two people standing in the ruins of what they'd broken. That was their consequence, I suppose. I didn't need to add to it. Still, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small, quiet satisfaction in seeing karma do her work without my help. The holidays came around again. The year before, Leah had sat at my table, laughing over mashed potatoes. Now it was just me and Emma. I let her choose the decorations. She picked purple and gold, because they look like hope, she said. We made new traditions that year. No more pity tears over what we'd lost. I wanted Emma to feel that our life wasn't less because it had changed. We baked gingerbread men. We danced in our pajamas. We watched old Christmas movies and fell asleep on the couch with cocoa stains on our sleeves. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt warm again. Then, one cold evening in January, there was another knock at the door. It was Leah. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, eyes red from crying. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice shaking. Every instinct in me said no. But I stepped aside. She stood in my living room like a ghost of a past life, glancing around as if she could still see herself here. "I didn't come to fight," she said. I don't know where else to go." I folded my arms. "Where's Tom?" She let out a bitter laugh. "At his mother's." "We're taking a break?" I said nothing. She looked down at her hands. "You were right about everything. I thought I could have your life. I thought if I just tried hard enough, I could fit into it." Her voice broke. "But Emma still calls you Mom, and Tom still talks about you like you're the one that got away. I hate that I did this to you. To myself, it should have felt like justice, but instead, it just felt sad." "You didn't just hurt me," I said quietly. "You hurt a little girl who looked up to you. You took something pure and used it for your own loneliness." Tears ran down her face. "I know. And I'll never forgive myself for it." She looked around the room again, eyes landing on the photo of me and Emma by the fireplace. "You built something real. I thought I could borrow that. But I see now, you can't steal someone's peace and expect it to fit. I didn't comfort her. I didn't need to. When she finally left, the air felt lighter. Sometimes closure doesn't come in a letter or a speech. Sometimes it just knocks on your door, broken and apologetic. The months that followed were quiet. Emma grew more confident, started playing soccer, making new friends, laughing louder. Tom still saw her on weekends, but he no longer mentioned Leah. Eventually, Emma stopped mentioning her too. Once, I asked gently, "Do you ever miss Auntie Leah?" She thought for a moment. Not really. She was fun, but she made Daddy sad. Children have a way of seeing truth without needing words. By spring, I'd started to feel like myself again. I joined a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time for. There was something healing about shaping clay, about creating something new from what had once been a shapeless mess. One evening, as I stood at the wheel, my hands covered in earth, I realized that's exactly what life was now. A reconstruction. The pieces that broke weren't wasted. They were just being reshaped. A year later, Leah moved out of town. I heard through a mutual friend that she'd started therapy, trying to understand why she'd always needed to live through other people's happiness. Tom stayed in the same house, alone. We spoke only about Emma, and even then, only what was necessary. It wasn't anger anymore, just distance. The kind that comes from two people walking in different directions, finally aware they're not meant to turn back. One evening, after dinner, Emma and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. She was 11 now, her hair longer, her laughter more sure of itself. She turned to me and said, "Mommy, do you think people can change?" I thought for a long moment before answering, "Yes, but only if they stop pretending they didn't do anything wrong." She nodded, thinking it over, then said, "You changed." I smiled softly. I had to. It was that, or stay broken. She leaned against me. "I like this version of you better." And I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in years. A few weeks later, I received an invitation in the mail. Not from Leah, but from Mark, her ex-husband. It was for his wedding. He'd met someone new, someone kind. At the bottom of the invitation, there was a handwritten note, "To second chances, the right way this time." I smiled, tucked it into my kitchen drawer, and whispered to myself, maybe that's the real lesson. Because life doesn't hand you peace. You build it, slowly, piece by piece, with the same hands that once trembled in pain. And sometimes, you build it alone. When people in town talked about Leah and Tom, I no longer flinched. Their story was theirs now, a tangled mess of choices that had nothing to do with me anymore. Mine was about survival, about motherhood, about rediscovering who I was before betrayal made me small. And maybe, just maybe, that was the happiest ending I could have asked for. It's strange looking back now. If you'd told me years ago that my best friend would become my daughter's stepmother, I would have laughed, or maybe cried, at the absurdity of it. But life doesn't always shatter in one blow. Sometimes it cracks slowly, along the lines of trust and comfort, until one day, everything you thought was solid crumbles under your feet. I used to wonder what I did wrong. Was I too trusting? Too forgiving? Too blind to the signs that had been there all along? Now, I think maybe I was just human. We want to believe the people we love are safe harbors, that the ones we open our homes and hearts to would never use that kindness as a doorway to betrayal. But kindness, I've learned, is not the same as naivety. It took me a long time to see that boundaries are not walls, they are fences that protect the garden you've grown. And I had let mine fall apart piece by piece in the name of friendship. Leah didn't destroy my marriage alone. She walked through a door that both Tom and I had left open. And as much as I wanted to hate them, I had to face my own part in that silence. The nights I ignored the distance, the days I chose peace over truth. Because sometimes love doesn't die because of betrayal. It dies from neglect long before that. These days I live quietly. Emma is thriving. She's in middle school now, already talking about becoming a teacher. She's learning that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. And every time she smiles, I know that whatever pain I went through was not wasted. Last Christmas, she asked if we could invite some of the neighbors over for dinner. I hesitated. For years, holidays were the hardest for me, but I said yes. That night, as the house filled with laughter, with new people and new memories, I realized that the past no longer had claws in me. Leah once told me that she envied how easily I made people feel at home. She didn't understand that home isn't a house or a man. It's the way you make others feel safe in your presence. And when you betray someone who made you feel safe, you lose a part of your own soul too. I can't speak for Leah now. Maybe she's rebuilding somewhere, learning her own lessons. I hope she is. Because forgiveness, I've found, isn't about letting the other person off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from being tied to their mistakes. And that's what I've done. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, I think about that first Christmas Leah spent with us, before the lies, before the affair. I remember how we laughed until our sides hurt, how Emma built a gingerbread house and made Leah promise not to eat it. I think about that moment because it reminds me that even in betrayal, there were once genuine moments of love. And love, no matter how broken, deserves to be honored for what it was, not cursed for what it became. So no, I don't hate her anymore. I don't even hate him. I just don't let either of them live in my story anymore. If you've ever been through something like this, if someone you trusted turned your life upside down, I want you to know something. You will breathe again. You will laugh again. You will look at the ruins and think, maybe this is where I rebuild. And one day, you'll realize you're not the same person who was broken. You're someone wiser, stronger, softer in the right places, and tougher in others. Because pain, as cruel as it feels, is also a teacher. It teaches you what love should look like. It teaches you who deserves a seat at your table. And it teaches you that sometimes losing what you thought was everything is how you finally find yourself. My name's Claire, and that's the story of how my best friend became my daughter's stepmom. A story of betrayal, yes, but also of boundaries, forgiveness, and rebuilding from the ashes. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven her? Would you have opened the door when she came back crying, or kept it closed? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your heart. And if my story touched you, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes the stories that break us are the ones that bring us together.